Good morning, everyone. Dana, I'm going to make you the host.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here. We would love if you guys feel comfortable and can put on your videos so we can see your fabulous faces. We have a great panel lined up for you guys today. I really appreciate everyone being here. We're going to give it just 2 minutes so that way everyone can make sure they sign on. In the meantime, I just want to kind of introduce to May. She has been instrumental in helping us get all this data for you guys today, as well as Devin, who is one of our co-chairs on the education committee, and Deidre Quinn. So thank you guys so much for helping us get this all together. For those of you that don't know, I'm Dana Friedman. I'm with Keller Williams Philadelphia. I am co-chair of our education committee. I'm also head of our productivity coaching program here. And we all know knowledge is power. So we are here today to learn from each other, to learn from the best. Something I don't think we do enough, right, is hearing from each other and getting some like awesome insight. So today we have a panel lined up for you guys of some of the best in the biz. I am fortunate enough to call so many of them friends as well. So I have Michelle Leonard with us. I have Bill Caretaker with us. I have Michael Cohen. I have Brittany Nettles. I have Britt McLaughlin. And I'm looking, there she is, and Sean Castle, who is also one of our PC coaches here. So thank you guys so much for being on here. It is 10:02. I want to crunch as much awesomeness into this as possible. Just so you guys know, this will be recorded. So let's try and keep it clean. And we are going to dive right in. So today is all about neighborhood insight. We've seen a lot of change and awesomeness. I would love to get started with Michelle Leonard. She is out in the Lower Merion mainline area. And Michelle, can you share with us, we oftentimes see very different trends in the city versus the suburbs. Now, I know you're very experienced in both. What insight can you give us about the changes you're seeing in the suburbs particularly?
So I actually ran some numbers for Radnor Township, which is right next to Lower Merion. I live in Lower Merion. And there I noticed that the days on market have been creeping up over the past year. And so right now, the average days on market is 19 days, which doesn't sound like a lot, right? I mean, that's all good. Whereas earlier in the year, things were really like popping. I saw more people at open houses. I saw more offers like over the top in terms of you could get dozens of offers if you wanted to. I used to sort of coach the agents because I don't like agents wasting their time.
Thank you. That's awesome. So Michael, you work more with investors and a lot in the city, a lot of transactional work. Can you give us some insight what you saw, happening in the city with the investor side, particularly, 19146 was super hot we've seen this year. What's going on? What are some things you're forecasting and seeing for fourth quarter and going into next year? You are on mute.
Hear me?
Yes, thank
Hello?
you.
Actually, 19146 was probably the hottest zip code in the past couple of years in Philadelphia. I mean, South Philly is a great place to live. It has shops, it has cafes, it has outdoor dining, it has traditional row homes with awnings, and there's a lot of culture in South Philly. And the growth is incredible. I mean, if you want to live in Philadelphia, but you can't afford Rittenhouse Square, 19146 South Philly is a great place to live. It's a great place to own. There's tremendous amount of building. There's a lot of renovation going on. It's a great place to rent. You get very high quality tenants there because it's usually working professionals. So it's a good place to invest. It's a good place to buy. As a matter of fact, my daughter lives in South Philly and she really does love it. So South Philly has that generation to generation of history. And it's just, it's like, I went and saw the Rocky statue yesterday and it just makes you feel really good about South Philly.
Absolutely. So with your investor clients, do you see more investors moving into that neighborhood?
I see a lot of more homeowners buying. I think that the price point somewhere in the, let's call it like the $300,000 price point is very affordable. So I see more homeowners moving in, but the investors are still there on the sidelines.
Love that. So I don't know about you guys, I'm super visual. So I just wanted to quick share some of these third quarters that I just quickly pulled from Bright Industry Watch. This is generalized, but what's important, I think, are the trends that we're seeing. So definitely from, third quarter of 2019 to 2021, right? We have definitely been seeing less homes for sale, right? That decrease in inventory. But we've seen that demand go up because of that. So slight increase. We're kind of seeing a little bit of a plateau in the Philadelphia market. When we look at Montgomery County, right, just outside the city, again, same thing, even more dramatic decrease in homes, which has created that more demand. A lot of people were talking about, oh my God, it's a seller's market, it's a seller's market. And now it's like, oh, it's cooling down, it's shifting. So we are seeing that. Those trends are true. And I would love to get some insight from Brittany Nettles and Britt McLaughlin and what insights you're seeing, what trends you're seeing, particularly in Fishtown, which we know has been a hot area for quite some time now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, to your point, we're starting to see the average listing price versus contract price go down slightly. We do have a pretty concentrated amount of both buyers and sellers in Fishtown, and we're starting to see like the market just contract a little bit. Buyers are starting to get more competitive, or a little bit more conservative, rather, still remaining competitive, but not taking these like egregious steps to getting something under agreement, such as like waiving inspections, offering like inspection retainers, stuff like that, shrinking periods, and more importantly, they're willing to negotiate on price a little bit. But the demand is still high. I mean, we have no shortage of activity, so we're seeing like the market here in this pocket just stabilize a little bit again. So when our clients say, oh yeah, the market's crashing, or things are contracting, like they're absolutely contracting, but they're stabilizing because it was so unstable for many months, if not the past year and a half.
And since I'm the analytical person on the other half of this team, I can give you some numbers to back that up. So the 1 year change in median price in 19125 has gone up 7.2% since last year. Mm-hmm. And average days on market has been 42 days, which is down 8.7%, which means things are selling faster. And the closed sales in 19125 have gone up 4.1% from Q3 last year.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for those stats. Guys, make sure that you are sharing that, especially if you are having listing appointments in that 19125 area, or you have buyers. Setting those expectations is huge in our industry. Letting clients know how selling, in 2 days, that's not normal. The average days on market, really helps you set yourself and your clients up for success. So thank you for sharing those stats. I'd love to pivot, and Bill, I would love to kind of talk about the shift we saw over the past year. You in particular lived in the 19103 Center City neighborhood. What were some of the changes you saw last year going into this year?
Yeah, I mean, obviously COVID kind of hits a market like that harder than others, just being in like Rittenhouse, like those really prime center city markets. And I think kind of like what we saw was people kind of froze in a way. It wasn't, people just didn't know what was going to come next with COVID. Is the market going to crash? Is it going to, is the city going to come back? And I think obviously COVID kind of, strung out a lot longer than I think a lot of people thought it would. But as we all know, like the real estate market had stayed strong. So I think like when we look at certain numbers as far as like accumulation rate, like how long things are staying on the market, the absorption rate has come down almost to like a seller's market, but it's not what it was pre-COVID. And I think looking back at the numbers, like if you look at like April or March of 2020, I mean, there was like, their months were only like 9 properties went under contract for like 2 months, like April and March of 2020 in that. So I think it kind of showed people were just like, took a little break. All right, what's going to happen with this market? I think people also like coming in a strong market into that didn't want to just panic sell. So, but, and a lot of people waited it out, but difficult time to sell a listing in Rittenhouse Square when there's a COVID, all the restaurants are closed and all that. But I think it's an important market to keep track of because obviously, like, at least for me, like living in that area for a few years, like that feels like for me home in Philly, like being in like the heart of the city. And people, that's where, the businesses are, the restaurants, kind of what people come to Philly for the most part. And, what we saw was kind of like, it's right now you go to Rittenhouse, you walk around, people are out, the restaurants are packed. So I think it's super, super optimistic. I think the market's kind of bounced back in a strong way and people are feeling good about it.
Love that. So true. And it's so awesome to see all those restaurants, opening and people attending and being outdoors again. Definitely, I feel hopeful, for more new opportunity to come into the city, right? Sean, I would love to get your insight. We saw kind of, or at least there was talk, right, of everyone was exiting the city and going to the burbs. What did you see over the past year happening, like in the Pottstown western suburbs area where you are? You're on mute, so if you can just unmute, please.
So I saw your email the other day, and you said I was in the Pottstown market, but I'm not really in the Pottstown market. I wanted to clarify that. I'm more like Chester County, Westchester, Downingtown, Malvern, Great Valley, like those school districts. But what we saw, I mean, I have some of the stats up right now. Right now, we have about 1.1 month of inventory in Chester County. So
that's not a lot, right?
It's nothing. It's that means that all the listings would sell in 1 month. So that's pretty ridiculous. Right now, the average days on market is around 14. So it's almost like if you're working with buyers, like I'm literally sending an email to my buyers right now. They're like, these are all properties that have been on for more than 21 days. So we might be able to get some leverage back. I'm still kind of fighting battles, especially in Westchester. Westchester might be the hottest area because the taxes are so low, but you can still get a really nice property and it's like in the $500,000 range. So for a lot of people, if you get taxes low enough, it becomes very affordable. And what ends up happening is you still get 10 or 12 offers. People are still waiving full inspections. And I'm like, I work with a lot of first-time buyers, and the one thing I tell them over and over again is, I can't tell you to waive an inspection. It's not in me to tell you to make the biggest purchase of your life with no due diligence. It's not a good idea. So most of them listen. Sometimes people are like, yeah, but we really want this. I was like, well, if you have to win, you have to win. That's what you might have to do. But we're still kind of seeing that like over and over again. I just lost a couple battles last week where that was the reason why. I mean, they were like, yeah, we had no inspections, cash offers, over asking by 5 to 10% still. In some of the markets outside of Westchester, like I said, like Downingtown and then like some of the surrounding areas, you're starting to see it where the inspections are coming back. Stuff is sitting a little bit longer. Like I have a listing right now in Birdsboro, which is Berks County, and that's been on for 21 days and we've had very little activity. So we're wondering if it's just overpriced. I mean, we thought the comps were we priced it a little low to create competition, but it might just be the time of year coupled with the price point, meaning like it's not going to get the activity we would have gotten if it was in June. So that's kind of what I've been experiencing for the past year is I had a lot of rumors that people weren't just flooding Philadelphia, like leaving Philadelphia. It was leaving New York, leaving DC, like all these major metropolitan areas. And what was happening is people are selling their condos in NYC for $1.5 million. And then they come out to Chester County and they're like, for $600,000, I can have 4,000 square feet in the best school district in the country. Yeah, I'll pay cash. So that's what was driving that. I think that started to really slow down. I'm seeing more or less like, under 10 offers, which if you told me that 5 years ago, I would have been like, 10 offers are insane. But, right now, like getting under 10 offers, I'm like, all right, we have a shot. That's good. I like that. So.
Love that insight. Absolutely. Michelle, did you want to add?
Sean, so for my buyers in Westchester, what I resorted to, because I, like you, believe the buyer should have home inspections because I'm not an inspector. And we started doing a lot of walk and talks. And I pointed out that for the cost of a walk and talk was like, you could do that for 5 houses to equal 1 inspection. So that way they sort of got over, but I didn't get that house and I paid for the walk and talk. So, because you're right, there's so many offers, but I do believe that number of offers is decreasing in Westchester. So.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to have a good contractor that a lot of times, because I send him so much business, he'll like walk with me and kind of give some insight, but it's still not really a full inspection. But we do get to like kind of look at those major mechanicals and say, all right, look, this looks good. That's what I would be worried about anyway, and what we'd really be asking for in an inspection. Because that's another thing I always coach my clients, like, listen, if you really want to keep this moving, like you're not going after nail pops and like window seals, like we're going after major stuff. So.
Awesome. Michael, what do you see are some predictions for 2022? And are there any new developments happening in the South Philly area that you can share with the panel today?
Sure. So I just wanted to let the agents know that, we're going to go through a seasonal adjustment. I mean, this is my 23rd year doing this. And we all start to panic during the holiday time, but it's definitely a seasonal adjustment that we're going to go through, which is still okay. It gives you time to take a minute to breathe and communicate more with your customers. And it's actually, I always tell my customers or my buyers that it's a really good opportunity to buy now because it's less competition. There's not as much competitiveness. I do see South Philly being a little bit top heavy. I don't have the statistics on me, but I could tell you that I could see that the showings are slower. And I wake up every morning and I see 30 drops, 30 people dropping the prices. So, I don't think it's time to panic. I mean, when the springtime comes around after the winter and after the holidays, Keller Williams, thinks that the market's going to increase between 5 and 7% in 2022. I can't see it going down. I mean, it's a strong market. People have to live. Philadelphia is still incredibly affordable. It's a great affordable place to live. It has everything you possibly could need within walking distance. So, that's pretty. And as far as what I haven't tracked every single new development. That would be almost humanly impossible. There's a amazing amount of new construction going up, incredible amount of rehabs, apartment buildings. I mean, I know citywide there's approximately 11,000 rentals being built. I mean, if you go to Northern Liberties, it's like ridiculous. So that could change a lot of things with that many rentals. Is there going to be enough people to fill those rentals? But we really make more money selling houses than we do doing rentals. So, I always say, if you're going to spend $3,000 on a rental, why don't we put you into a nice single family home?
Do you think any of the development along Washington Avenue in Philadelphia has had an impact in the South Philly zip codes over the past few years?
Oh yeah, it's amazing. I mean, what's going on Washington Avenue? It's a lot of it's rentals, and it seems like Streamline is now marketing towards 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. I think they found a niche in that on Washington Avenue. The other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit about Grace Ferry. That market is a little bit saturated right now. Things are sitting. Grace Ferry needs more restaurants. It needs more bars. It needs more boutique shops and things like that. And I think it will attract, more people to buy. It's sort of sitting stagnant at like a 250 price point, and it could increase if maybe if somebody goes on a campaign to try to drive that neighborhood into having more walkable places to go and make it perhaps a little bit safer. Back to Washington Avenue, it's just the face of Washington Avenue has changed, and the value of the values have increased dramatically.
Michael, can you share for those that maybe aren't as familiar with the Grays Ferry neighborhood? That's along the Schuylkill Avenue on the west side of the city. Any other borders demographics that you would describe? Like, what is kind of like that invisible line that divides it from, say, Point Breeze?
Well, we all know Grace Ferry's on the other side of the tracks, as we say. It's that pocket. And actually, I believe that Grace Ferry has a name. It used to be called the Forgotten Bottom. Kind of it's kind of a terrible name to describe a neighborhood, but it was the Forgotten Bottom, and it really has, it's on the other side of the tracks, which I guess is 25th Street, and runs up to the expressway, I would say north to Lombard and south to the expressway to the river. So it's a good pocket. It's really, you could walk over, if you live there and you worked at University of Pennsylvania or went to school there, you could walk over the South Street Bridge and be at work or be at school or be at the hospital. So it's a really good location. Plus it's also, if you get lucky, you could get a riverfront view, probably right now at a really low cost. So I bought some real estate in Grace Ferry like 15 years ago. I had to wait 10 years for it to come back. It sat there for a long time, but I think it's a good play right now.
Thank you. Brittany and Britt, can you share some insight what you see for 2022 in terms of development? Fishtown has been booming. A lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, opportunity like, restaurants and shops, we see that, we have that in Fishtown in particular. What do you see? Is there more to grow? Do you see it expanding? What are some of your insight and predictions for 19125 and the surrounding neighborhoods?
Yeah, I know I could speak for Britt. We're both super excited about like the trajectory that is still happening here in Fishtown. We're seeing a lot more anchor restaurants come and more noteworthy names coming from Rittenhouse and folks from the Cook and Solo, which is like Zahav, coming and pioneering Goldie here in Fishtown. We also had Steven Starr at another restaurant. So we're seeing a lot more noteworthy names come. But in addition, on the real estate development side, I mean, similar to Michael's point, we're seeing an influx of rentals still being developed, both in 19125, 19122. We have a client who's developing over 120 units over the course of 2022 into 2023. So we're still seeing quite a bit of activity here, all of which is just giving us an optimistic outlook going into next year.
Love that. Anything to add, Britt?
I think Brittany spoke really well about the neighborhood, but we both live here, so we live it day to day, and obviously we work here, our office is here, so it's really exciting. I think a lot of what would have been considered fringe areas are being bled into by developers, and people really investing in those areas is creating an expanse of the Fishtown neighborhood, which we all know there's loose borders on Fishtown. Everyone likes to say they're in Fishtown, maybe they're in Kensington, Old Kensington, Port Richmond, but everyone says Fishtown now. And just anecdotally, I was talking to a neighbor who literally was born in the house that he's next door to me in, and has lived here his whole life. He's in his late 60s now, and he was saying that I technically live in Old Richmond, and he said back in the day everyone wanted to call it Port Richmond, not Fishtown, because Fishtown was the scary spot. So it's interesting to see how neighborhoods have flipped, and how just more influx of people, and like Brittany was saying, anchor restaurants and anchor businesses are really driving the expansion and growth here.
Yeah, we joke and we call it Port Fishington to find a healthy compromise now. Clients laugh.
Love that. Sean, what kind of developments are you seeing out your way? Are you seeing rentals? Are you seeing single family? Are you seeing 55 and older communities? What kind of developments are happening out in the suburbs more? Oh, you're on mute. There we go.
I got it. Sorry, I'm so used to Zoom on my phone that I haven't done it on my desktop in like, I don't know, 8 months. We have a ton of Toll Brothers, Lennar, NVR, Ryan Homes projects like all throughout Chester County. So I would say it's crazy though, because they're like affordable homes being built and they're like starting at $900,000. So I'm like, I get that like you're pushing a demographic and we have top school districts and stuff like that, but like most of the time, like, you know, you're not, I don't work with exclusively $900,000 clients. So a lot of the times when people are like, can we check out new construction? I'm like, we can, but you're probably not going to like what you're going to be able to afford like a lot of the time. So it's like a weird conversation now. Now, when you get somebody that wants to be $1 million buyer and they can afford it, it's great. You know, I mean, new construction, they take over the deal. I will say like some of the projects in this area, especially I think Lennar is really only offering like a flat rate. And I've seen them as low as $500 for a buyer. So like your compensation can go completely out the window if they decide. So
Crazy. Michelle, what are you kind of seeing in developments? Are you seeing more single family? Are you seeing 55 and older? What is kind of going on?
So on the main line, I mean, if you're doing new construction, it's super high end. So I just sold a house or put one under contract for 910 with Rouse Chamberlain, and they are paying me 2.5% on a base price of $764,990. So it's kind of interesting. So in terms of our pocketbooks, it's not that lucrative. As far as options, if that same buyer, because we looked, went to the Newtown Square Edgemont area, they could only afford a townhouse. So he worked at the Navy Yard and decided to drive that extra amount to get 3/4 of an acre and a really lovely house. So.
Awesome.
And by the way, Dana, before you go to the next person, I have to give you props. Dana helped me get a house listed. I listed it last Thursday. It sold on Monday with a Keller Williams agent, which I'm delighted about. And it was because she had a graphic on her Facebook page that showed value today, potential value in a year, interest rate going up 1%. And in both cases, it proved to say buy now, sell now. And thank you.
Yeah, anytime. So happy it helped. That's all I want. If I can help one person, that's the goal, right? If I can help more, even better. And that's what we're all here for. That's, you know, hopefully you guys walk away with some awesome insight. Hopefully you now have new faces and names and can leverage each other, right? We're all in this together. Getting, you know, masterminds together allow us to learn from each other and also connect. You know, I feel so grateful that I have all of these panelists here. When I have questions, I can reach out and leverage their knowledge and insight. So thank you guys for sharing all this stuff. Bill, I would love to get your insight. So you actually were someone that did kind of move out of the city and into a different neighborhood. What were kind of some of the driving forces that made you decide, you know, was it for more space? Was it for, you know, change of scenery? What kind of motivated you? And what are some of the things that your clients that are not from the Philadelphia area, where are they coming from?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think a lot of times, you know, us realtors in the city see this where, you know, my typical client that's buying in Philadelphia already lives in Philadelphia. Like they're usually maybe either like, you know, renting. A lot of times for me, like they're renting in like Center City, Northern Liberties, and like more expensive area than they're probably going to afford to buy a house in, or it might not make sense to buy a house in that neighborhood. So for me, like, you know, renting in like the, you know, over at 22nd and Walnut where I was, like, it didn't make sense for me to buy a property there. Although maybe I could find a condo within my price range. I wanted to buy more of a good investment play. So following like Brit's kind of like thing, going to like the Fishtown, Old Richmond, Port Richmond area, where we also, you know, do some of our business and see the construction, see the growth. So like, I think that's a lot of realtors probably see that in the city where they're, you know, you're renting in the neighborhood and then, okay, let's buy. Oh, wow. You know, I'm renting in Northern Liberties, but it's going to cost me like 800 grand to buy this house next door to me. Let me see where else I buy something. But as far as like developments in that area, we see obviously like the Laurel being built. A lot of when I think about that market, I'm not really thinking like high end luxury. I'm looking at a lot of like the condo buildings around Rittenhouse Square, Warwick, Park Rittenhouse, and also a lot of the high end luxury rentals that like for example, not really 19103, but like the Atlantic Building, or of course the Laurel will have those. And kind of it's interesting to see, that those, like, you're thinking like who's going to rent like a 2-bedroom for like $4,000 a month, and they're going like they're not sitting vacant. So and I think like from my experience, the people that are buying in neighborhoods like that in around Rittenhouse and those condos, typically sometimes it's people that are downsizing. Maybe they're coming from the burbs, they want something a little bit smaller, or it's maybe not their first house and it's not really an investment, and they just want a prime location in Philadelphia. And I think that's all dependent on people wanting to enjoy the city. Like we keep talking about COVID, like it wasn't fun to live in Philly or in Rittenhouse, like March of 2020, because no one was there. I remember walking around on like, just like there was nothing to do, walking around the neighborhood. It's like a ghost town. So, seeing that all come back is super optimistic. And I think that the market in that neighborhood in the next year is really going to depend on a lot of the supply and the demand dynamic, because this isn't for at least that condo market, like this isn't a fly off the shelf, 20 offers like we see in the burbs. This is like, you might be on the market for like 90 to 180 days, even if you kind of price it right. So I think the inventory is going to be a big factor in how that market develops next year, in addition to obviously interest rates and the other things that we're looking at.
Absolutely. And Bill, you bring up a great point, right? What does that client need and want? And then also, what's that buyer pool, right? Our high-end luxury condos is a very different buyer than, the family of 4 that wants a backyard. And being able to share with them like how their money looks in different areas, right? Michelle shared about how she had a buyer and just moving over the town a little bit further got them a lot more for their money. So all these great tips and tricks allow us to kind of be the best agent for our clients and share with them all the different opportunities, and share with them like if a client wants the best investment, they might not necessarily be looking in the right spot. We might have to pivot them and share with them different insight. So I think as agents, we're working with buyers, we're working with sellers, we're working with investors. We also have now these renters, and we've talked about it a few times, right? Where our clients are spending so much on rent, sometimes it doesn't make sense for them. They should really consider buying. And Michael, I'd love to share your insight. What are kind of some of the questions that you are having or the conversations you are having when you see those clients maybe shifting from renters to buyers? What does that look like?
Your question, you're asking me, people coming into apartments to buy? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always recommend that you should own your primary home. As we all know, that renting a $3,000 or $2,500 rental, you a mortgage for that. So I don't have, unfortunately, I don't have a ton of younger 25 or 30-year-old buyers that are coming out. I have a lot of people that are downsizing. So I have people that are downsizing and thinking about going to places like the Sterling. And I'm kind of trying to talk them into, buy a single family home in South Philly, or buy something that, that give you value. And even though you are downsizing from the suburbs and moving into the city, I don't think renting is a good way to go. So many people have purchased homes that we're going to rent. So, I think that's a good market. But I just wanted to let everybody know, the market is starting to, slow down. So you just have to remain positive and tell your buyers and sellers that, it's a seasonal adjustment, and we're going to, gain momentum again. And we may end up getting we typically gain a lot of momentum towards the end of the year. Somehow people have an urgency to buy something by the end of the year. So
Well, those investors too, right? They go to their accountant, the accountant says, you got to spend some money before the end of the year. Get another house on your tax return, right?
exactly. I mean, I get a lot of 1030. I'm getting a lot of 1031 calls now. And if everyone's not aware that the 1031 exchange, I think is going to be limited to like 400 or 425,000 next year. And also they may change the capital gain situation. So it's really every day is a good day to buy. And the market's, it is going to level off, but it'll be back. It'll be back strong, and try to keep those renters and get them to buy single homes, or talk them in, maybe want them to buy a multi-family or a 3-family, live in one and rent the others out.
Thank you. Britt, can you share some of your insight? I know you guys work with a lot of renters and then converting them to buyers. What are some of those conversations you're having about, especially in the city?
Yeah, we do have quite a bit of renters. So, from day one, I think when everyone gets in the business, that's like the low hanging fruit to get started. So if you're new here, don't look down at rentals unless you're truly trying to break into a luxury market and going for that bigger ticket price. I think rentals is a really nice way to gain momentum and build out your database. On average, most renters turn to buyers within 2 years. So as long as you keep in contact with them, they will convert. And that's been a lot of our business as well, because Brittany and I are just in our 5th year now. So a lot of our previous renters have converted to buyers or are buying their second home with us. When we are talking to people who are looking to rent and they're kind of torn between what to do, similar to that graphic you shared, Dana and Michelle was talking about, we talk about the financial benefits of renting versus owning and what that looks like compared with their specific financial situation. We also have really great relationships with our lenders, and they'll have quick 20-minute qualifying conversations without doing a hard credit pull, just to see and set a goal or a target. So that's how we approach it. We tell a lot of our renters, like, just have the conversation. It's 20 minutes. And, at the end of that conversation, you'll know if you feel financially ready and comfortable to buy, or if you need to rent for another year, and then you'll have a target on what to save and what to work towards so you can buy next year. But oftentimes people are pleasantly surprised at how much they can afford and what they get approved for. I think the biggest piece is that down payment. So knowing how to finagle and what programs to put them in and how to use a seller assist and things like that, or talk to them about that, especially now as the market's cooling in a lot of areas. Sellers assists can work now where they may not have worked through the spring and early summer. So those are some strategies that we use, and they seem to work really well.
Yeah, I think Britt and I have gotten pretty good at discerning like who is genuinely curious about like home buying and how to set them up for success. And what Britt already mentioned is we introduce them to our lenders, and they just have an exploratory conversation with lenders, and then we'll take it back and give them options and show them on our end and explore with them on the real estate end. One of my favorite stories actually is a deal that I did with Michael Cohen back in 2017. And this is like the Super Bowl victory story that I use with all of my clients today. But it was a $260,000 home in Point Breeze, the Newbold area. And I got them in with $8K out of pocket. And that was because of a lender grant program and seller's assist. So I always use that story to illustrate, like, you can get in with a lot less than you think. And that's like the proposition there. But yeah, it was Michael's property that his client had rehabbed and are actually selling it again now. So hold on to those buyers. They were renters turned buyers, and now they're sellers. So quite the relationship. But it all started with curiosity. Yeah.
Well, Brittany, you were great to work with.
Thanks.
Love that. See, you build relationships that last years in this business. It's a much smaller world than you think. And it's awesome when you actually get to do deals with other realtors that also become friends. That's probably one of my favorite part of this business are the people. So,
Ditto.
Sean, I would love to pick your brain. In the city, we talk a lot about, first-time homebuyer grants and opportunities, to negotiate sometimes for our clients. Do you see that possibly happening with the market in 2022 since inventory is so low in the suburbs?
So like, I mean, I've had some pretty big wins this year. I had a couple of FHA buyers that got seller assist, which everyone was like, that's impossible. I'm like, I mean, listen, you got to find the opportunity that works. I like kind of like what Michael was saying earlier, like this time of year, I tell all my buyers that have been aggressive through the summer, like, I'm like, if you stay aggressive right now, you can find a really good opportunity where you might not have as much competition and you might not have to fight over it so much. So that could be a big deal. As far as like using like the K-Fit programs and like those other loan programs, like not as much with the competition we have, just because like typically when listing agents see that in like my area, they run. They don't even like, it's hard to get a VA loan accepted in where I'm at, because they're like, well, I have 2 conventional loans and a VA loan, so I'm going with one of the conventional. So that's like been kind of my my roadblock, I guess, like with my buyers that are FHA or VA. But even then, it's like, if you find something that's been sitting on the market for 21 days and then you have a viable conversation. I kind of had a big win at the beginning of last year where we went up against, we only had one other agent in competition, but the listing agent was a KW agent that I had gone to Bold with in Exton, and she knew me, and our offer was like $5,000 less. But she told her seller, like, yo, I've worked with Sean before and working with him makes the transaction way easier. I would go with him over this person I've never worked with before, but that's just my 2 cents. And we won the deal. And she told me that. She's like, honestly, I just knew you would keep the ball rolling and like get everything done and it would be easy. So that's what I told my seller. So like, it is all about the relationships and like the opportunities you can kind of create for yourself. As far as like, yeah, like loans, like loan programs and grant programs like that, like not as much just where I'm at, because the price points are usually too high for like what those programs are really for. And like, they just don't really apply, like I said, with the competition that I have.
So how are you setting yourself up for success and also your buyers up for success if they need some type of assistance, whether it's a seller's assist? How are you setting those expectations?
My teammate's doing that right now with a buyer. She has very little out-of-pocket money, but she has a lot of equity in the home. And so we're trying to, leverage that. And when she's looking at homes, her problem right now is there's just not a lot to look at in her price range that she wants. I try to just be hyper realistic with my buyers. Like when somebody comes to me and they say, I have $2,000 in my pocket and I want to buy a house, I'm like, you can't. Like, I just tell them that. I'm like, this is where you're at. Like, you need to be saving more money. I have conversations all the time. Like, one of the things I'm doing right now when I'm not talking is sending out text messages to people. And somebody's talking to me right now about like, well, I just want to get a plan together. To me, the biggest part of like what I do for people is I get them on the right path. And then it might not be 5 months from now. It might be 18 months from now, but they're going to call me back and say, all right, cool, I did all the things you told me to do, and now I have 20 grand saved and I have my credits kind of resolved and da-da-da. Cool. Like now we can be a strong buyer. Like I try to make people into the client that I want them to be. You know what I mean? Like if they listen to my advice, then great. I've had clients this year. Somebody just called me 2 weeks ago. He hasn't listened to any of my advice over the last 2.5 years since I met him. And now he wants to buy a house, and he's like, we try to get him pre-approved, and they're like, you're going to need to put like way more down than you want to put down. He's like, yeah, why do I have to put 40% down? I was like, because your credit's not good, because you didn't listen to any of the plans I gave you. You didn't call my credit repair guy. You didn't set up your business structure the right way. Like all these things that you were just like kind of a wild card about, and then it didn't go his way. And he's like, I don't want to buy a $250,000 house. I want to buy a $500,000 house. I'm like, but you can't, like, you didn't listen to me. So sometimes it's just like how it is. You just have to tell them the truth. I have a newlywed couple I'm working with right now, and they same thing. They're like, we make X amount of dollars and we want to buy this kind of house in this school district. I said, this is what you should do for the next 18 months. And they said, all right. And I said, I'll check in with you every 3 months. And that's what I do. I check in. How's everything going? Are you guys able to stick to the goals that we set? Da, da, da. And they're like, yeah, like, it's a little tight, but we're doing it. And I'm like, cool. Like, you're going to be able to get this thing that you really want to get if you do the steps that I'm giving you. So as far as like somebody who comes to me and says, I need to buy a house and I have no money, I'm like, listen, maybe I just told my friend this, your best bet is renting for another year, save your money, don't go out, like don't go on vacation this year, just save that money and do what you need to do to get into next year, And when we come back next year, hopefully the rates are still good and we can make something happen. So yeah, I mean, there's just not like all those grant programs are designed for like under 300,000 most of the time. So like when you get into like most of Chester County, that just goes right out the window. So
Love it.
Sean, there is a program with the Navy Federal Credit Union.
oh yeah, I just found out about this.
They don't have to be in the military themselves. They just have to have like a parent, a brother, something like that. The rates are slightly higher. However, 100% financing is the magic pill for most people.
Sure, yeah.
And you can have a seller credit on top of that. So that might help you.
All right, yeah, it's definitely. I just had a client actually reach out about that, and he was like, "I'm using Navy Federal," and I was like, were you in the military?" And they were like, "Nah, but my sister was," and I was like, "All right, sounds good. Like as long as they talk to you and it worked, I'm cool with it."
The person I've used there multiple times, her name's Amy. If you need her contact info, call me.
All right, absolutely. Thanks, Michelle.
That's what this is all about. Thanks for sharing, Michelle. Michelle, you have been in the business for a while, have a ton of experience. You've seen the ups and downs. So when you're working with clients and they're not seeing what they want, there's nothing on that market that I want, what do you say to keep them motivated and keep them, still upbeat about hopefully buying a home either end of this year or beginning of next year?
So part of that is the education. So in that, I've been using your little diagram, by the way, and I'd love Britt's diagram if she has one for rent to buy. I'd love to have one of those too. But I feel like if people genuinely are motivated to buy a house, they're going to stay motivated. You just have to sort of lift them up when their offer gets turned down, something like that, be there for them. And sometimes people are impatient, and especially like in the spring, do you remember offer, reject, they're not as resilient as we are. And we have to sort of be there for our sellers and our buyers. And I feel like that's what we really bring to the table for all of our clients. Don't you?
I agree. We're all mini psychotherapists, right?
That's so true.
Yeah, except I'm marrying a therapist, and if I ever call myself a therapist, she'll go nuts on me because she graduated from Penn with honors. So
your clients can see her for a fee.
She'll be able
We have a literal therapist on our team, and she said that it's exactly like her therapy practice. So if that means anything.
Yeah, we say our full-time is real estate, our part-time is therapy. Mhm.
Love it.
well, I was a bartender for 20 years too, so that was like I was already trained in the therapy aspect of it before I got to this.
Bartenders and hairstylists. Yeah.
I'd love to open it up to you guys that have been here. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask our panelists? You can feel free to put it in the chat box or unmute yourself, but we have some awesome knowledge here available to you. So I want to make sure if you have any burning desire questions that you get them answered today.
Yeah, this is me, Dana Al. I don't know if I missed it. Did you all do anything on the West Philly market? Was there anybody I heard?
We didn't specifically talk about West Philly. Do you have a specific question about the West Philly market? We were focused on some of the top performing neighborhoods, which has mostly been the Lower Marion, suburbs area, 19103, 19102, and 19146. But if you have a question about a particular neighborhood, we have some great insight here. So we will try and get your question answered.
Not any specific question. I just wanted to know, what were some of the numbers around 19139, and if anybody was, just familiar with what was going on around it. Nothing real, crazy.
I still have my statistics sheet up if you'd like me to give you some hard hitting numbers. Okay, so 19139 average price point for Q3 was around 125.5. It's down 7% from Q3 last year. Let's see. What else can I tell you? Average days on market, 60 days, which is down 36.2% from Q3 last year. So similar to the other areas we're talking about, days on market have dropped quite a bit because things are selling quickly. And there were 54 closed sales in Q3 in 19139, and which is down 40% from last year, Q3.
And we're also seeing a lot of activity spur in 19143, like the king sussing part. We have 65 rental units being developed by a client currently. So we're talking a lot about rentals, but we're just seeing a boom there for sure. But quite a bit of both home sales listings that we're representing on the rental and sale side as well. But the king sussing is like such a concentration right now for a lot of buyers, we're noticing. So
yeah, and to support Brittany's claims, the price per sold home in Q3 went up 5.7% from this time last year. And days on market is down 36.4%. And there was 145 sales in Q3. So definitely more than the 19139.
Yeah, no, that's definitely good information. And how about the U City in the Penn catchment area, like the school district, like around there? Because I think I'm closer to there.
yeah, that's like
That catchment is
concentrated. Yeah,
is a microcosm. It exists
Okay.
unto itself.
Okay, cool. Okay.
But if you
'Cause
go
this
in
is-
right, you can like scrub that data, and we're happy to show you how.
Maybe
Yeah.
we can put that on the calendar, ladies. That would be a great training, I think, that we could add value to our market center and to open it up to anyone else that wants to join the bright insights that you guys can share. That would be awesome.
Because I mean,
We're always happy to.
my goal is to be, to just be able to provide numbers to the people in my area. I think that'll be a great value for them because I think this area, it's kind of funny. My brother just bought in this area. He paid 600 grand for his house. So this area is kind of, so I just wanted to know if anybody was familiar. But I mean, I could go on Bright. And if I have any questions, I'll ask you all and try to crunch some numbers because I really want to get an understanding of the area because this is where I stay.
Yeah, under the market tab, and Dana, we can talk. But under the market tab, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different options for you to pull different types of data, which Britt and I have been pulling almost daily, if not every other day, for our listings because we're trying to analyze like what's happening in certain concentrations, but also like larger zip codes between like our listing presentations and like our current listings. So we're just feeding that to our sellers and to our buyers as well.
Cool
Love
deal.
that.
Definitely.
Knowledge is power.
For sure.
So we have a really great question, and I think it's a great way to end our panel today. And it was, how did each of you, choose the areas that you're experts in? This panel specifically, we looked at what were some of the top performing neighborhoods, and then we kind of went to the best in the biz. But, we do have a mix of both new agents and seasoned agents. And I think when you're getting started, right, you want to be an expert. You want to know everything. And we know that that's just not possible. Knowledge is power. We're all growing and learning always, constantly. And that's how we become the best in the business. But if each of you wouldn't mind just sharing kind of how you developed your business in a neighborhood. Was it because you live there? Was it because you know a lot of people there? You grew up there? What kind of helped flourish your business in a particular market? Michelle, would you mind starting?
I'd love to. Okay, so I've been in the business for 34 years, which feels like just yesterday. I started out in a small area of Lower Merion Township, and as the years progressed, I found myself selling all over our region. I've been on relocation teams, but what I've learned is to really have the most knowledge, I needed to sort of pull my business back, which some days isn't successful because if I sold a house in that area and someone wants to list with me, I'm going to do it because I know the area. But I do feel if you don't have a big book of business, get involved in your community. Dana knows, do I not eat out a lot? Okay, so I post about that on my Facebook page. I post into community groups. I'm out there. I eat out and people tell me who I am. So that's a good way to add to your sphere of influence. Maybe not to the numbers Gary Keller wants me to every day, but it's adding a few people here and there every week. So, but I do think if you focus more like the girls in 191, what is it, 25 in Fishtown. In other words, that's really smart because when people want to go into that area, they're going to come to the top of the list. And, you know, I think that's awesome. So, is that an answer?
Absolutely. Yeah. Putting yourself out there, get involved in your community. Bill, would you share some of your insight?
Yeah, I think in real estate, you kind of like follow your client's lead sometimes, or like where the business takes you, you kind of adapt to be able to help them in those areas. So, you know, for me, I've done a lot of like new construction and kind of upcoming hot neighborhoods and have been doing, you know, had the information for those people to kind of like make a decision, whether it's, you know, a lot of times it's not just the stats. It's like, hey, you know, Brewery Town, like I remember like in 2018 or whatever, like, hey, Green Eggs Cafe's opened up on Gerard Ave. Like everyone's like, oh, that's cool. That's a new place to go to. And right now it's like, since I've been doing it for a few years, like people look at like the 1914 zip code or like Northern Liberties and see like, wow, like if I bought there 10, 15 years ago, I would have made a ton of money in equity. My value would have went through the roof. And what I have this conversation all the time with buyers, like first time home buyers or investors, like what's the next version of that? What's the next iteration of that boom? And, you know, I always point out a few select neighborhoods that I think could potentially be that, whether it's like Port Richmond, certain parts of Fishtown, Brewery Town, Grays Ferry, you know, opportunity there. And so I think, but also like knowing that those markets and like really know, like, for example, I've had buyers, a lot of buyers drag me out to like, not drag me, like Manayunk, Roxborough, like the burbs is here where I'm not used to that. And then I had to like really dial into those markets and I, you know, to educate my buyers, like how you're actually going to be able to make purchase in these markets, you know, and if you're looking to buy in Manayunk, like 4 months ago, you have to do whatever it takes to get that property under contract and like setting that mindset. You don't want people, and what I see right now is like people are getting discouraged a little bit by like, I see properties come up. It's like, hey, multiple offers, offer deadline. And then like no one's sending an offer because no one wants to deal with it. Like I've had that where like the listing agent calls like, hey, you know, no one actually sent an offer. And maybe that's just like the market or like people just, I don't know if people don't want to deal with it or what it is, but you know, I've just kind of maybe followed my client's lead and try to be valuable to them with market information in the neighborhoods. And also it's like where I want to be. Like I want to buy another property in like the Port Richmond neighborhood this year. So that's where I'm kind of like, what's going on with the market? Where are things moving? So I think there's some self-interest into the information that I look for as well.
Love that. Michael, can you chime in into your insight?
Absolutely. So when I started in the late 90s, no one would buy anything below Washington Avenue. And if they did, it was 39.9. And I watched the market develop in South Philly. I was working at 17th and Pine at the time, and I watched the growth occur to go below Washington Avenue, and I watched Grace Ferry develop. So you become passionate about the neighborhoods and watching them grow for 20 plus years and seeing all the development. You know, every day you drive down the street and you just can't believe, you know, the change of what happened from the late 90s and 2000s and the price increases. So you develop a passion for your neighborhood and learning the neighborhood and you know, enjoying being there and visiting the local restaurants and you know, enjoying the culture, especially South Philly. You gotta love the culture in South Philly. So that's kind of how I developed passion into these type of neighborhoods. Even Grace Ferry, I watched Grace Ferry go from, you know, a very tough neighborhood into it's starting to be a vibrant community. But I just wanted to add in one thing that, you know, the affordable housing market is something that I really focused on. Affordable housing and investment rentals. And that market's really not going to change. I mean, that will never change. The high-end markets, the condos, that may change through the years, but you know, in Grace Ferry, we can still offer our customers affordable housing and parts of South Philly, and some of the prices are dropping. So you know, I think that's a good focus in the market. Affordable housing and investment rentals to, succeed through the winter months.
Love that. Thank you so much. Sean, any insight that you want to share about becoming an expert either in a particular neighborhood or how to grow your business as a newer agent?
Well, one of the things, so I actually met Michelle working in a restaurant way before, but she probably doesn't remember that. But I think that is like, that's a big thing is, especially now that like we can go out again. Like if you like, I grew up in Westchester, so I would go to the bar and hang out, go get food, hang out, talk to people that were there, talk to all the bartenders, become friends with like kind of the regulars in that community. And then, just literally you have to ask, like you have to say, hey, is there anything I can ever help you out with? Here's my card, here's my number, let me get your contact info and build your database. I mean, Dana, from me on coaching sessions, like my biggest thing is if you have 1,000 contacts in your phone, you have 10 deals right now, like today. So, and if not way more. So if you go through and ask for business from all of those contacts every day, diligently kind of going through the alphabet, I don't see how you're not going to get new business as a brand new agent. And the biggest thing I always hear from brand new agents is, well, I don't want to annoy people. I'm like, or I don't want people to like make fun of me. And I'm like, listen, if you start making $200,000 a year, do you care what people are saying behind your back when you're texting them and they're not answering you? Do you really care? And that's, to me, is like the whole attitude shift is just, you can't worry about other people's opinions of you. Like it's not important to me. So I did have some friends who would write back snarky responses when I would send them mass text messages, and I just don't text them anymore. That's fine. So, and I keep doing it. And today, like I sent out 25 text messages while we're on this call, and somebody wrote back, is like, hey, do you ever like sit down with buyers and like teach them how to buy a house? I'm like, literally 100% what I do. And she's like, all right, can we do that sometime this week? I'm like, sounds great. So like, it's kind of like, it sounds hokey sometimes, but it is like, Kevin talks about this all the time. It's the same repeatable actions over and over and over again. And sometimes it might even seem boring, but that's what is going to generate like really substantial business for you over time. As far as becoming the expert in the area, like I kind of like am the state of mind. Like I grew up in Chester County. I've been here since 1987. I went to school here. I didn't really ever leave. So I know everything. I've seen everything grow and I like it here. So I have no problem kind of saying to people like, when people move from Delaware County to Westchester, they're like, the taxes here are so much cheaper. And like, oh my God. And like, I get to rant and rave about how great Westchester is or how great Malvern is. And those are like just my favorite areas because that's where I've lived my whole life. So that's kind of like, for me, I think, if you were brand new and you moved here from Alabama and you just want to start a new sphere, then just go out and integrate yourself into the community. But if you grew up in an area and you like it there, just talk about that area.
I love that.
Sean, which restaurant did we meet at?
I used to work with Mumta at Main and Vine.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah, Mumta says hi.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And Britta and Brittany, can you guys share your insight about how to grow your business and be the expert in the area? What has been some really helpful insight for you guys?
Yeah, so I'll go first and then Britt can comment. But just stay active. I mean, I've been in Fishtown for the past 8 years collectively, but stay active. Similar to Michelle, we're social media mavens, right? Like we spend a lot of time there recording and posting where we go, what we eat, the coffee that we drink. And I think that just creates conversation and community and engagement too, which is right the name of the game: engage, converse, convert, right? But not only online doing that, but physically as well. So like 9 times out of 10, Britt and I are together walking around the neighborhood and we run into agents that we know. We spend time hanging out with agents that we know. We go out to the restaurants, we see clients because a lot of our clients are concentrated here in the neighborhood. But we do cast a pretty wide net. I wouldn't say all of our businesses here in Fishtown, but we do a significant amount. But we just cultivate community wherever we go, and that's online and offline, which is just continuing dialogue all around. So
Yeah, Brittany's definitely the queen of social media. I can tell you 36% of our business comes from Instagram. So I think the one common thread that you're hearing from everyone who's speaking on this panel is that you create a niche. The niche doesn't have to be an area. It doesn't have to be, specifically new construction or first-time homebuyers. But once you start to figure out what that is, go for it, right? So Michael was talking about how he works with, that lower price point because it's been his bread and butter. And Michael's name is all over South Philly, right? We all know that because he's built up that niche, and he's the go-to for that. Michelle's Mainline, like that's her area. Bill didn't talk about a specific area, but he's new construction. That's his bread and butter. So figure out where your interests lie, whether it's a location, a type of demographic, or a type of property specialty, and then become the expert in that. And the way you become an expert in that is learning the data. So I clearly am the analytical one of the two of us. So I'm looking at numbers all the time. And that just empowers my conversations. I can very confidently say, this is what's happening in this area. This is the expected days on market. If we're not moving and there's no traction, it's because here's the number of days on market that we should expect to sell. We're not selling houses in 7 days in this market, right? And if you want to, then maybe we need to adjust our pricing. So that's how we have powerful conversations. I also, we were talking about the Adair catchment, or no, the Penn Alexander catchment. Become experts in that, right? If that's where you want to focus, learn everything you can about that catchment, how it works. Go talk to the people at the school to see how, admission works, and if you can get people outside the catchment in and how that works. And really just become the subject matter expert on whatever you choose to focus on.
I love that. Thank you all so much for your time today. I hope everyone here had some great ahas. Hopefully you made some connections. All of my panelists, thank you so much. Some people have put their info in the chat box. So take a minute to look in the chat box if you want to grab somebody's info. You can always, reach out to me if there's someone on the panel that you would love to connect with. You all know I love connecting people, and if I can help you guys in any way, just ask. Thank you all for being here today, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I hope to see all of you in person soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Dana.
Thanks, Dana. See you guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.